Australia, once known as one of the West's strongest liberal democracies, is now making headlines for banning Jews who hold mainstream Israeli right-wing views from entering its borders. Former Minister Ayelet Shaked, influencer and tech advisor Hillel Fuld, and now Israeli member of Knesset Simcha Rothman, all denied visas, their political opinions deemed unacceptable. This new move comes as antisemitism rises across Australia, shortly after the government recently imposed personal sanctions on certain Israeli ministers, and as Canberra prepares to recognize a Palestinian state. A pattern is emerging, one that raises urgent questions. Is this about foreign policy? Is it about silencing Israelis and Jews? Or is it about something maybe even more dangerous? A slide away from free speech and Western values themselves. Joining me to unpack this unprecedented moment is Robert Gregory, CEO of the Australian Jewish Association, the man who invited Rothman to Australia, and with us is Australia's newest outlaw and the canary in the coal mine, member of Knesset Simcha Rothman. Welcome to you both.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Oh, a great pleasure. Unfortunately so. So let's get a little bit of factual background. I want to focus some time on what this decision actually is, the language of it, the law behind it. But I want to just get some factual background as to what this trip was supposed to be, what's behind it, what's going on in the Australian Jewish community. And for that, Mr. Gregory, if we could start with you, I'd appreciate it.
So the Australian Jewish community has had a very difficult 2 years, like much of the Jewish world, but even more than many other places. Australia has never known a lot of anti-Semitism. It's always been a very friendly country for the Jewish people. People came here because it was so far away from all the problems, all the hatred. But these last 2 years, we've witnessed synagogues being firebombed. We've seen videos going viral of nurses threatening to kill Jewish patients. Almost every single week, there's a major anti-Jewish incident. With the scenes at the Sydney Opera House where many people heard crowds chanting, "Gas the Jews." These scenes went around the world. So we had the idea, my organization, the Australian Jewish Association, to bring Simcha, very popular in Australia, to take him on a solidarity tour. He could see for himself some of the damaged synagogues, meet some of the victims, give words to strengthen the Australian Jewish community during this difficult time. We'd organized speaking arrangements at many major synagogues, at Jewish schools, and also private meetings with different leaders, rabbis, and other people. So this was the plan.
And on this trip, MK Rothman, what were you going to say?
So first, it's I think that especially in the last 2 years, we in Israel experienced Jewish visitors from all around the world for solidarity missions, of course from Australia. Actually, in the same morning that I got the message that my visa was banned, I was scheduled to meet with a group from Australia, from Melbourne, coming to Israel for solidarity mission from Dominion, one of the shuls in Australia, in Melbourne, and I think that it's extremely important when Jews all around the world suffer from anti-Semitism, from attacks, because some of them because they are seemed to the mob, to the jihadist mob sometimes as representatives of the state of Israel. By the way, whether they support our policies or not, or undecided, it not really matter. They're all being blamed for everything Israel is doing, and basically plain old Jewish hatred. So I think the state of Israel, and as elected official in the state of Israel, it's part of my job to show solidarity, to come, to visit, to hear, to offer help, whatever we can do. And of course, to remind the world that we are united, that we are one nation, and remind our fellow Jews all around the world that Israel will always be there for them, whether if they choose to make Aliyah. Of course, it's our job to make Israel a safer place and a better place for them. But also, if they choose not to be with them and help.
Well, based on the language that is criticized in the decision revoking your visa, you may have just extended the cancellation for the next 20 years. Let's talk about this now, the kinds of statements and the kinds of views that the decision revoking the visa goes into. So there's a law that allows the Department of Home Affairs to revoke a visa on the grounds, or to cancel a visa on the grounds of the health, safety, or good order of the Australian community. And they speak here both about what the trip was supposed to be in terms of fostering dialogue and understanding and strengthening the Jewish community. And then they go into the kinds of views and the kinds of statements that they consider to be posing a risk to a segment of the Australian community, which they explicitly say is the Islamic community. The visa holder's social media and public statements mirror the policies of his party, including the elimination of Hamas. The expansion and sovereignty of the Israeli state, and the denial of any wrongdoing by Israel against Palestinians and Gaza during the current conflict. Mr. Rothman, are these in any way outside the mainstream of Israeli political views?
First, definitely, it's not the outside of the mainstream of Israel, but and it's some of those views were adopted in resolutions in the Knesset that I led, which enjoyed the support coalition and opposition of 80 Knesset members. And we also, the reaction of the Prime Minister and of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Sa'ar. It's not about me. It's about the state of Israel and the views of the vast majority of the state of Israel. But not only that, I want to point out, and it's something that I did not say in other interviews, and I was interviewed quite a lot about this issue. But the way you just read it made for me clearer to understand that actually the position of the Australian government is quite Islamophobic. They basically say that if you are part of the Islamic community, you support Hamas. I would never say such a thing in Israel. I would never say such a thing in Australia, to say if you're part of Islamic communities and if you will hear someone saying you should eliminate Hamas, you will be radicalized and outraged. I think it's a terrible thing to say on the Islamic community in Australia. And I really want to hear what Robert has to say about it. But for me, it's we have lower expectation racism that's coming from Australian government in that manner. They basically say you're a Muslim, you probably hate Israel, you probably support terror. By the way, Hamas is a terrorist organization in Australia. So it's terrible. It's a terrible thing to say.
Robert, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I think it's outrageous. I mean, this is the minister and the department that's responsible for applying Australia's anti-terrorism laws. And if they have a problem with eliminating a terrorist group, that's a major, major concern. I agree with Simcha. It is quite Islamophobic. Obviously, Australia has quite a large and rapidly growing Muslim population. It's now more than 10 times the size of the Jewish population. It's already over 1 million. But they don't all support Hamas. They don't all support terrorism. And Simcha coming and speaking in Jewish schools and synagogues poses no threat whatsoever to the Muslim community. It just wasn't a factor at all.
Well, we're going to focus more on what may have been the motivating factors here, but I do think it's important to just look a little closer at the statements that were considered to be so incendiary that Mr. Rothman could not enter Australia for fear of angering, I guess the implication is, crazy mobs. On the 26th of February, the visa holder stated that Israel is closer than ever to enacting sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, dismissing concerns that annexing the biblical heartland, says the decision, would trigger World War III or lead to significant sanctions against Israel. We have to make this loud and clear that we want sovereignty, that we are working towards sovereignty, and we are willing to do what it takes. I think the world today understands who we are dealing with. People understand that Israel is fighting the good fight, and they want to join us another incendiary quote. We will continue
Of course, I need to apologize that I was so wrong. Apparently, Prime Minister Albanese and Minister Burke do not want to fight the good fight. So apparently, I was wrong.
I was going to give you more to work with, but sure. We we will continue to strike at the enemy and fight the terror that surrounds us relentlessly in order to protect and defend the security of the citizens of the State of Israel. The world must stand on the right side of history, strengthen the good in the war against evil. Yet another quote is where you oppose the idea that children in Gaza are dying of hunger. And when asked why, I'm not sure if this is the full quote, but when asked why Israel does not allow the children to leave Gaza, you reply, they are our enemies. It sounds like
That's, by the way,
out of context.
not only, no, it's not even out of context. I never said it. It's out of context if you take something out of context. And actually, there was a piece in Sky News in Australia showing and reading the actual transcript of what I said. I said, why aren't you letting? I was interviewed here in English media channel, and I asked them, why aren't you let Gazans who wants to leave Gaza and not serve as Hamas human shields, why aren't you allowing them to leave and come to you if you care so much about their well-being? And they said, why aren't you letting them get into Israel? And I said, because they are our enemy. And then the reporter said, the children are your enemies. I did not say this quote. It's a quote by the interviewer. I just repeated what I said in the first sentence, that the Gazans are our enemy. And I think that anyone with his right mind that knows that Palestinian population in Judea and Samaria and in Gaza, when asked in polls, do they support the atrocities of October 7th, answered more than 80% said yes. So I think that's defined. If you support beheading children of Israelis and Jews, I think that qualifies to be an enemy. I don't think it's a controversial. I don't even think it's my statement. It's just a fact. We have a war in Gaza with people who are committed for our destruction. It's enemy 101, right?
It's an important clarification. And Robert, when I was researching for the show, I noticed that there was a major controversy around visas that have been extended to Gazans coming to Australia, and that in fact the majority of applications, as of last year at least, had been denied.
The majority have been denied, but I think Australia is still taking the most Gazans of any country in the entire world, more than any of the Arab countries. We're taking in thousands of Gazans. It's very controversial here. They're being rushed in without any proper vetting. Australia doesn't have any representatives in Gaza, so they're being approved. And some of them, when they're arriving, people are looking into their social media and there's big problems. And some of them, at least one of them has been detained by the anti-terrorism organization here. So while Australia's letting all these people in, which people should be very concerned about, given the polling out of Gaza that, if we bring in 3,000, okay, obviously not everyone's a terrorist, but you just need to look at the statistics. A lot of them would have support for terrorism.
So I want to bring you into this conversation because it seemed to me when I was looking into this that there were a few things happening. Okay, member of Knesset Simcha Rothman is not the first Israeli to be banned in the recent couple of years. As I mentioned, it was former Minister Ayelet Shaked for her supportive position on Jewish settlement of Judea and Samaria, and also some statement made about Khan Yunis, and Hillel Fuld, who has a very, very large following online and has been using it to advocate for Israel since October 7th. But when I looked at, at least people that are known to have had this kind of ban, it was also Candace Owens, it was also Kanye West, it was also David Irving, who's a Holocaust denier. It was also Mike Tyson at a certain point. And I think part of what's at play is a very different notion of free speech, certainly than what we have here in Israel, certainly than what we have in the United States. That's one side of it, and I'd like to get your take on it. And then the second part, which is some stuff that you talked about even prior to when we opened the show, is a very, very strong push on the part of Australia to try and get some kind of two-state solution, where this fits into a pattern of behavior over the past couple of years. But I'd like to first understand this free speech aspect, because in a way that could lend some kind of context to the way in which these decisions are being made.
So Australia doesn't have the same free speech rights as somewhere like the United States. It is an issue here. But all those people you just named, from David Irving, Kanye West, Candace Owens, first of all, they're all actually very hateful people, but they're all people on the right. So you'll see this government, it doesn't keep out, we have a lot of radical Islamic preachers being led into Australia, or far left people. It doesn't take any issue with them. It's a very left-wing government, and it does keep out people on the right. My organization, we think Candace Owens is terrible. The things she says are terrible, but we were not in support of keeping her out for free speech reasons. We believe she should have been allowed in, but I think it's quite different to the cases of what's happening with Jewish and Israeli people, because all these people, Kanye West, Candace Owens, they're very, very well known, and they genuinely spread a lot of hate, whereas the Jewish and Israeli people are not very well known. They're speaking to private Jewish events, not massive, stadiums full of people. And I mean, take the case of Hillel Fuld, for example. He was coming to speak to Magen David Adom about technology, which is his industry. So it was nothing related to any conflict. And obviously, MK Simcha Rothman was talking about antisemitism and nothing about the conflict. So these cases really stand out. They're very atypical compared to how the Australian government is applying these laws in other cases.
So there was another thing that emerged in the research for the show, which was that there was a recent case in which an Australian court ordered a series of, Islamic sermons taken down from YouTube because they were offensive to the Jewish community and quite, insulting and abusive toward Jews in the concepts that were being spoken about. And the court actually took the time to distinguish between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in its opinion. And it raises the question, because one of the main things in the decision on Mr. Rothman is his opposition to a Palestinian state. It raises the question, which is something you just talked about, of whether Australia sees the opposition to Zionism and the opposition to the state of Israel in quite the same way.
So Australia has adopted the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that was adopted under the previous government with the support of the opposition at a federal level and in the major states. So technically, we should really be considering these extreme examples of anti-Zionist hatred as anti-Semitism, but this government doesn't do it. We see Australia has very strict hate speech laws, but they're never applied. We have crowds chanting for death to the IDF, death to Zionists, and the laws will never be applied because they say it's considered protected speech because it's criticizing Zionism and not Judaism. So it's a bit of a loophole that the laws are not applied appropriately.
Okay, so Mr. Rothman, I know that now that people have discovered that your summer plans were canceled, you're much in demand, and so you don't have much time left to be with us on the show. I do want to understand from you, there is a pattern now with this particular Australian government, as mentioned earlier, of a very strong push to two-state, and that is taken, from what I can see, several forms, including votes against Israel at the UN, some of them really breaking with at least 20 years of political tradition. Australia voted for a resolution in late 2024 calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Australia voted as well for a resolution calling on Israel to withdraw from, and I quote, occupied Palestinian territory as rapidly as possible. And of course, just a few months ago, they personally sanctioned Minister of Finance Bezalel Smotrich and Minister Ben-Gvir. What has Israel done about this? I know in your case there was a very specific response by the foreign ministry, but what are the more tactical moves taken, and what's the larger thinking about the way in which things are moving?
Okay, so first, I want to a little bit add about what Robert said about what you asked about anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. One of my titles is that I'm a member of the Interparliamentarian Task Force combating anti-Semitism. Um, so, the IRA definition has been one of our key projects to make more countries implement this definition of anti-Semitism, and of course if you basically deny the right of the Jewish state to exist, it's not coming without a context of anti Semitism. And if you apply double standards for the state of Israel because it's the Jewish state, then it's part of being anti Semite. And that's what we see here. Because we know there is an active genocide going on now as we speak in Syria against the Jews. The only country who ever done anything about it is Israel. You don't see people in Australia condemning anyone for it. Actually, you see the leader of the new Muslim Syria, the rightful owner of of the of the of the ISIS regime that was there. You see him accepted in countries that say that Bezalel Smotrich is not to be accepted, or me, or Ayelet Shaked, or Hillel Fuld. So when you see double standard like this, you have to attribute it to what it is, which is a double standard because we are representative of the Jewish state. Um, so it's directly connected to it, and we need to fight it the same way. And actually, I was very sad to see some. I saw a lot of voices even in the Jewish community, that basically do not understand it. They think for some reason that if they will go against the representative of the state of Israel, it will bring them in a better way, maybe with their own government or with their neighbors. And reality is not that. No one attacking me because of my views. If I was not a member of the Israeli parliament, no one would even raise an eyebrow. It's because I'm representative of the state of Israel and of the Jewish people, and they are doing it because of this. So now about the response. So yes, we saw the response from the Prime Minister and from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Sar, about this action by Australian government, and I think it's a good start. But Israel, and I think people who follow what's happening in diplomatic affairs around the world see it. Israel has moved. I saw an actually headline today in the Jerusalem Post um, saying every action has a reaction, including against Israel. So for many years, Israel was not responding to action like this from our friends and from people that are on the fence, from countries that are on the fence. And we were saying, okay, that's life. They don't like us. Let's continue. And we turned the other cheek. I think that Israel in the last year understood that's not the right way. Of course, the fact that we are getting all this kind of attacks while we are at war with an enemy that is unquestionable what they're going to do. It's not a border dispute. It's not. It's not about mining rights. It's about the right to exist. And when you see people that are standing behind Hamas, you cannot give them any excuse. You cannot say, "Oh, it's interest because they have oil or whatever." If you side with Hamas, as in the quotes that made me proudly be an Australian outlaw. If you side with the evil against the good, there is no question what are your priorities, and Israel should react. And not only Israel, I think we see also from the Trump administration, we see reactions to this kind of behavior from other countries because they understand also that the West is next. It's not only against Israel, it's a challenge that the entire world is facing, how to deal with jihadists and with terror. And Israel is the first. And you know what? As the chancellor in Germany said, when we attacked Iran, he said Israel is doing the dirty work for the entire world, and Hamas is just a proxy of Iran. It's not no different ideology. And Israel, while doing the dirty work for Australia, for Germany, for the countries in the UN or in Europe. Um, we are getting stabbed in the back by the very people that we are defending against the world jihad, and Israel is reacting in more harsh way, and that's the way I think it's the right way. We should not get attacked and turn the other cheek. That's not the Jewish thing to do.
It's interesting that you of course mentioned some confusion now about the way in which the West or parts of the West is processing Israel's fight against jihadi terror. I will note also that in this decision, whoever wrote it felt the need to mention that you had been protested when you went to Yale to talk about judicial reform. And in the decision, it says some protesters allege, I can't believe that finding this in a government document. He is indirectly responsible for the Hamas October 7th, 2023 attacks, as he ignored the advice of top Israeli military leaders that the controversial judicial legislation was leading to political instability that threatened military preparedness. So there's clearly a misunderstanding of the laws of cause and effect there, I think, or just a complete erasure of individual responsibility, national responsibility, an understanding of jihadi terror. And when I read that, I actually was quite afraid for Australian society. It was a mix of that and just the lack of respect, really, for free expression, and especially for these particular views, which are pretty central to Jewish national ideas. They can be controversial within the Jewish community, but they represent a good part of it. Robert, do you have anything to add on these points?
Yeah, I think it's so outrageous for a few reasons. First of all, Australia has had its own experiences with Islamic terrorism. We had the Bali bombings, which killed a lot of people. We had many other incidents, the Lint Cafe siege. And if anyone would have offered, those attackers, if anyone would have said they should get a state or we should reward them or make compromises with them, Australians would be outraged. We expected the world's sympathy, we expected the world's support, and we got it because that's how countries should respond. And to accuse Simcha, to accuse the Israeli government of any responsibility over October 7 is quite hypocritical, because the Australian government, if we're going to start making accusations, they bear indirect responsibility. They fund UNRWA, which they've been warned so many times it's used to incite hatred amongst the youth, amongst Arab children, and that it leads to terrorism. And for many years, the Australian government funded directly the Palestinian Authority as well. So our government has given, since October 7, something like $150 million Australian dollars to UNRWA, which is outrageous. So I think they're the last people that should be making accusations. And lastly, one more thing on judicial reform and these things, which again were not the topic of the trip. No Australians know about it. It's an internal Israeli issue. There's no concern at all whether someone supports either side or not. Maybe a small community of Israelis living in Australia are following this closely and know the details, but it's just not. I mean, like Israelis would have no idea about Australia's judicial laws. It's irrelevant here.
Member of Knesset Simcha Rothman, the relationship between Israel and Australia is still a very important one. It's obviously quite tense around the moves made to pressure Israel into a particular solution and even into what I might consider military defeat. But what is like the vision forward outside of retaliation? And to Robert, I would ask, what steps is the Jewish community taking to respond to these sorts of things now and to protect itself generally? It seems, both because of this incident, but certainly because of many others that you mentioned earlier in the show, that life's becoming quite uncomfortable. So I'd like to hear from Mr. Rothman first, and then Mr. Gregory.
So of course, I will not comment on inner politics in Australia. That's up for the Australian public to make their own decisions. But I think that the decision made by this government, by this administration in Australia, is definitely problematic, again, to the Israeli-Australian relationship. I hope they will change their way, because if Israeli elected officials cannot visit in Australia, of course, it will have an effect on the relationship. I think that if Israel will not react to this kind of actions, it will only get worse. I hope this strong reaction by Prime Minister Netanyahu and by Gideon Sar, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and by the Israeli public, and you have to remember also leaders in the oppositions that said that stood behind me on this issue despite our differences, because I think that's the way to do. I hope the Jewish community in Australia will show the same unity with the state of Israel and with the other parts of Jewish community, despite differences that exist there. And I believe that if we will be united and will show a strong front against boycotting Israel, against denying visas to elected officials in Israel, and against the recognition of a Palestinian state, because Israel sees it as a danger. I don't expect every member of the Jewish community in Australia to agree with me, but I do expect anyone in the world who will call himself a friend of Israel to say, okay, 2/3 of the Knesset in Israel said a Palestinian state is dangerous to the state of Israel. 99 Knesset members voted against pressuring Israel into agreeing to a Palestinian state in February 2024. I am a friend of Israel, and I will not pressure Israel to do something that Israel thinks it's against its own interest, despite what I think about this issue. That's what I would expect from any friend of Israel, a Jewish community anywhere in the world, and any friendly government around the world. And I think if Israel will stand on this demand, we'll see better things in Israeli, as Netanyahu called it, the eighth front, diplomatic and international media.
Let me ask you one anti-question before we move to Mr. Gregory for the wrap-up. Israel, of course, has rules about who can enter. Every sovereign country has rules about who can enter, and we reserve the right to ban BDS supporters, for instance. How do you distinguish between that case and what, in the mind of the Australian government, is the denial of a statehood that they want to recognize?
So first, Israel should not accept into its own borders people who are calling to fight against it. If I would make a quote against Australia, if I would say that Australia does not have a right to exist, that you should boycott Australia, I wouldn't be surprised if Australia would say you are not welcome here. That's normal. So comparing Israel, saying if you are against Israel, you're not welcome in Israel, to Australia saying if you are not agreeing that the Palestinians should have a state where in its law books it would say kill everyone who sell land to a Jew, and you kill more Jews, get more salary, I don't understand how it's even in the same area of debate. It's not even in the same world. This comparison. I think Israel should not interfere and not prevent for someone in Australia that will have a view of the rights of indigenous people in Australia on this way or that way. I think if Israel will have a legislation or has its official interfering in Australia's business like this, it would cause a lot of anger in Australia, and it will be justified.
Mr. Gregory, the way forward for the Jewish community?
So I think I would agree with MK Rothman that I think the retaliation was very important. For too long, Israel has just let countries push it around, and once they see there are consequences, they'll be less likely to take measures. So in this case, it was removing some of the visas from some Australian diplomats that work in Ramallah. This shows there's consequences, and I think Israel needs to do this on a grander scale. I know there's talk of closing down the French and other consulates in Jerusalem, and maybe even if all these countries at once want to recognize a so-called state of Palestine, then perhaps it's time to declare sovereignty over all or parts of Yehuda and Shomron. Like, that is the way to show the international community that picking on Israel, it's not going to be successful. It's not going to achieve the aims they want. In terms of the Jewish community, I've never seen anything shared as frequently as the letter from Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was extremely popular in the Jewish community. It strengthened people, as did some of the comments from other ministers. The Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, Minister Chikli. It was good to see that. People really liked that. My organization supported that. Some other Jewish organizations did not, and they're in a different situation. They deal much more with the government, so they're in a different situation. But in terms of the Jewish community, we know it's going to be a tough few years. There's certainly a lot more talk about Aliyah. I don't think this is showing up yet in the statistics because it's a new phenomenon and it takes a little while, but it definitely will. I know prominent Australian Jews who are beginning the process, and I would advise Israel to reach out more to the Australian Jewish community because it's a very educated community, it's a very well-to-do community, a very cohesive community, and a lot of people are now thinking, do they have a future in Australia? But on a more positive note, the opposition in Australia is very supportive of the Jewish community, and so are some of the smaller other political parties. So, I mean, it looks like it'll be a tough few years, but the future, at the end of the day, I mean, there's always hope, and no party is in power forever, so things will obviously get better.
Well, I wish you much success, and come visit us in Israel, since looks like for the next 3 years at least Mr. Rothman is here. And after this show, I may well be too. So
Well,
we'll see.
We'll say as well, I haven't had a chance even to tell Knesset Rothman, but different lawyers and barristers have reached out to me offering free help if he wants to challenge the decision. So that's also available to him as well.
Well, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Thank you both very, very much. And Mr. Rothman, have a great summer here in Jerusalem.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
להתראות in Israel.